Hey everybody, welcome back to the Frugal Filmmaker Q&A. That's the show where you send me a filmmaking question and I try to answer it. Remember, your best chance of having your question read on the show to send me an email to thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com, or you can comment below, or you can send me a message on Twitter at Frugal Filmmaker. My video last week was all about repurposing drink koozies. These are basically foam padded jackets that you stick a cold drink that you have in an aluminum can inside and it keeps it cold. But you can also use these for several other interesting filmmaking applications. So if you have some of these laying around or you know how to get some, you might want to check out that video. Our first questions today come from email, and the first one is from the FX-Teen100, who asks, do you have any advice on making DIY instruction videos? I plan to make some, but I'm not exactly sure how to do it. Well, I do have a little experience making instructional videos, and the first thing I would recommend is that you have some kind of hook at the beginning. Show them immediately what you're going to give them, or what you're going to show them, or demonstrate, or make, or build. Whatever the end product is, show them at the very beginning. Show it in action so that they will have a reason to watch your entire video. They want to see how this is possibly done. The next thing I would recommend is just a simple introduction by yourself, the person that's creating the video. Show them your face, make a connection with the viewer so that they won't be kind of alienated if you're just going right to the table and just showing your hands or the build, which is an important thing, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But always make some kind of personal connection with the viewer so they know, hey, you're an actual person. And even though you might be kind of dry on camera, like I have been lots and lots of times, at least you're making an attempt to do that, to say, hey, this is interesting and I've done it and I think you should do it. But just that kind of face on the screen is a good way to start. Up next is the actual build of the video where you're putting things together. And probably the most common format of this is a cooking show format, where you basically have a shot of the talent on screen, kind of in a medium shot, from waist to head, and then whatever they're doing is in front of them, and then throughout the build or the construction of the project or the cooking of the meal, you cut the close-ups, and then when you're done, it's over. I actually don't like that format because it's just harder for me to shoot, so I just go right to the desktop where I'm putting things together and everything's done in a close-up, and there really are no cutaways to me at all. It's just the actual build. Now, I'm not sure if this is as pleasing. In fact, I would say it's probably not as pleasing as a standard format, because in the standard format, you're actually seeing the person make something, and that's kind of comforting, and you can relate to that, opposed to just sort of a bodiless set of hands that are just putting things together. However, that's a lot easier to produce than the first way, because I can just set up a camera and point it at my desktop, which I've done, and I can put things together quickly and easily. So you kind of have to determine what kind of video you want to make. If you're just going for technical and informational stuff, I think just the hands is fine. But if you want something that's a little more personable and easy to relate to, and probably more popular, then you might want to show yourself or the person on camera actually making something. One thing I would recommend, though, no matter how you do this, is that you always want to have your person that's talking mic'd and being recorded at the same time you're shooting, because trust me, it's a huge headache when you put something together, no matter how you're doing it, and then have to go back and have to add a voiceover. That's just an extra step you don't want to have to mess with. And then finally, at the end of the video, of course, if you haven't been showing yourself or the person on camera, you want to go back to them and kind of wrap things up and make that personal connection, especially if you haven't done it through the whole video because you've just shown your hands like me. I always like to come back on camera and again kind of show or comment about how this has worked for me, or what I'm doing with it, or what someone else has done with it, and then just wrap it up in a nice, neat little bow at the end. Now, if you're doing some instructional video where you're just doing something on a computer screen, first you want to get some software like OBS, which is a great free screen recorder, and you can do whatever you need to do on screen and record it. Put it in your editor, and I highly recommend you edit that as far as doing close-ups and wide shots of the screen and pans and all kinds of things. You can do that in your editor. I highly recommend you do that so it's not just a boring computer screen that you're watching in a single shot. Direct the viewer's eye. Even if it's a computer screen, you want them to see exactly what you're talking about, so guide them along just like you'd guide them in a film. Okay, next up we have John Raffin, sorry if I butchered that, John. He says, I go to a small college that has a good film program. The teachers are great, but my fellow students don't help each other. I have endlessly helped with so many projects over the years, and I can't get any production help for my projects. I thought people would want to live and die by each other's projects, but I guess not. What should I do? Make a film that I could do by myself? Well, this is a really interesting question, because I've talked about this concern in the past where people say, hey, where do I get a cast and crew? And I've always recommended, hey, go to film school or audit a acting class or audit a film class or whatever, and try and meet other people of similar interests. But here, John has gone to film school, worked on other projects, where usually people, at least my experience has been, you help each other out, you work on your own projects, and even after film school, you continue to make films, and you've developed those relationships, so you have all kinds of positions that are automatically filled by people that are good at those positions. But in this situation, this is a really tough call, and I'm sure, there are several of you watching this that could probably help John out. There's a kind of a famous story where Ron Howard met George Lucas And Ron Howard was interested in becoming a film director, which of course he later did, but George Lucas recommended to him, hey, you should get into animation because you don't have to deal with actors. You know, some people have made their own movies where they basically do every single job, including all the voices, and it's animated and what have you, where they don't involve anybody else. But that's not the ideal situation. If you really want to develop as a filmmaker, it's a collaborative art. You have to get other people involved to really pull anything off of any kind of weight or scope. There's exceptions, of course, but I think you have to work with other people. So, John, what do you do? If you're living in a bigger city, they will have a local film commission, which should be able to point you in the right direction. You could also still do what I said about as far as auditing other film classes, maybe not where you went to film school, which is, again, really unfortunate because you put in all your time and effort to developing those relationships and they're just not working. So you're going to have to go somewhere else. If anybody watching this has any suggestions or advice for John, please comment below. I know he'd appreciate it, and so would I. All right, next up we have Francisco Gonzalez, who says, it's that time of the year to showcase our work from the past year. Any tips on creating a demo reel? To be totally honest, I've never put together my own demo reel, so it's definitely high time. But if I were to put one together, I think that I would just suggest, of course, like a movie trailer, you want all the best material in the shortest amount of time. I don't recommend you go over 3 minutes. I know for actors' reels, they are not supposed to go over 3 minutes because you just want the best stuff right away. Definitely stack the video with the best stuff up front, so if anybody tunes out, you've shown them your best stuff. I think contrast is really important. You definitely want to show a variety of stuff on your reel and not just kind of the same thing over and over. Even if it's different projects, but they're all kind of the same, you don't really want to show that. You want to show that you have range, that you can do different things. Not that you're just a one-trick pony. I'm sure all of you watching this have various opinions on this, so please comment below and help Francisco and I make a better sizzle reel. David Brown says, I want to start to get into filmmaking and shoot some interview vids and short films before I attend film school in the fall. I was wondering if you knew of some vintage lenses that produced a retro cinematic look. Well, congratulations about getting into film school. That's awesome. You do mention that you're considering getting a T5i, which is a Canon DSLR. I would not recommend any camera with a mirror in it if you're going to adapt vintage lenses to that camera. I would recommend getting a mirrorless camera. There are lots of them out there. There's the Panasonic GH series, there's the Sony series, they have all kinds of them. As far as specific lenses, I don't know what I would recommend to you as far as a specific retro look. I use Minolta lenses, Minolta rocker lenses, which I really like. But I don't really have enough experience with a variety of lenses to know exactly what to recommend to you. However, I do have a really excellent YouTube channel that I could recommend to you, and also a blog, which is called Vintage Lenses for Video. It's the perfect site for exactly what you're looking for, and the owner and operator of this site, I don't know his name, but I know he does some really awesome work, and he's always checking out old lenses and attaching them to his cameras, Sony specifically, I believe, to see what they look like, and he has lots of demo videos and lots of recommendations and lots of examples of what these lenses can do. Really, really awesome site and YouTube channel. Highly recommend it. I'll leave a link below in the description so you can check it out if you're specifically interested in that. But again, mirrorless cameras are really important for this kind of work because trying to adapt a lens to a non-mirrorless camera or a camera with a mirror in it is problematic and expensive. And finally, we have a YouTube comment from Anton Arenko who says, I was wondering if you had any tips or advice on any way to film a car chase scene in a frugal way. This is kind of a tough question for me because I'm a big believer in practical effects, meaning you're doing everything in camera. So if you're driving in a car, I like to be in a real car. I want to show people in a real car. I don't want to do chroma key or any kind of fakery other than maybe putting the car on a trailer or towing the car. If you're doing a car chase and you want to do it in a realistic, practical fashion that's not comedic, meaning you don't want it to look fake, you're going to have to do something realistic, meaning you're actually driving cars fast, and I don't recommend doing that because it's incredibly unsafe. And if you're making any kind of a frugal film, you're probably not even insured, and even if you are putting people at risk that aren't professionals, meaning you probably don't have a stunt driver or a stunt coordinator or people that actually do the actual stunt work, the actual stunt driving. So I would recommend that you don't do a car chase. Figure a way to write around it. If you need some kind of a chase, you could do something like a foot chase, which would be just as dramatic, but you could get away with using actual actors or people that you know, people that are in your movies that aren't professionals per se, because it's a lot less dangerous than putting people in a moving car and having them drive fast or appear to drive fast. None of this risk or potential danger to you or someone else is worth it. Just do something different. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone who wrote in. Again, really good questions as always. Always impressed by the letters and emails and comments that I get. It makes for a really interesting Q&A show, I hope. And we're kind of on a new schedule. I don't know if you noticed, the Q&A is now on Tuesday with the actual official Frugal Filmmaker video, ideally coming out on Friday, because I'm trying to avoid working on weekends unless I'm actually on a film shoot to spend more time with my family. I think that's really important, but I want to maintain the Frugal Filmmaker releases. It's just instead of Monday and Thursday, we're now switching to Tuesday and Friday. We'll see how that works. As you probably noticed in the past, I've had a hard time maintaining that previous schedule. So now we'll see how this schedule works out to see if I can keep it up and just make it more consistent, because I think that's really important. At any rate, I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next Monday.